Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 98. Today on the podcast, Jen interviews Fiona Fine. Fiona is an author, speaker, and coach who specializes in the communication differences between men and women. Fiona works to empower both women and men to take full accountability for their own lives. Full accountability, eh? Nah. It's more fun to blame someone else when something doesn't go the way you want.
Good morning, Diva community. This is Jen Swanson, and happy 2015. It's been a long time since I've put out a podcast, I realize, and it's not because I haven't been missing doing this. It's because I've been working very hard on my new book that is now available on Amazon.com for pre-order. The book is called What They See: How to Stand Out and Shine in Your New Job. So I hope you go over to Amazon and check it out. Order your book now. It's on a discount until it's released May 1st. And the more people that will order it, the more people will notice it and see it. So I'm excited about that. That's what's been going on here. Our little puppy is doing well. He had some surgery on Friday, so he's been a bit out of sorts, but then there won't be any little bandits running around the world. But it was a good thing because he's had all sorts of digestive issues, and so they decided not to pass that along in the service dog gene pool. But he's doing really well. Life is good otherwise. Lots and lots going on. Speaking engagements coming up and book tours and all sorts of fun stuff. I'll keep you apprised of all of those things in case you're in an area where I'm going to be, because I would love to meet you. And so I will let you know where the book launch is and all of that as well. So exciting times. I am speaking today to author, speaker, coach, and publisher Fiona Fine. And Fiona Fine is a relationship expert in her early 50s. She's the founder of Goddess Connections, which empowers women in dating and relationships with the platform that is how to put the fun back into dating.com. She is also the founder of womenwhorunit.com, which is an online community and magazine for strong, successful, super achieving women leaders around the world. And Fiona advocates and coaches people who want to create the best life of work, money, love, and fun that they can. So she's got a book out called Babe in Total Control of Herself, and she's working on another book, and she's having a conversation with me here about what she's up to, where she's been, her story, and what she plans to do next. So here is Fiona Fine. Hey everyone, this is Jen, and here I am in my home studio speaking to Fiona Fine via Skype. And Fiona is an author, a speaker, a coach, and a communications expert. And I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Jen. A pleasure. It's good to be here.
You're several hours away from me. I understand you're in Toronto.
Actually, I'm cheating. I'm snowbirding in the Naples area of Florida.
Are you?
So it has been a gorgeous winter for me, comparatively speaking.
Fantastic. Yes, because you would be knee deep in snow, I'm sure, if you were back
and
home.
Cold.
And
yes.
cold. Lovely. Well, this is the beauty of being able to do what you do, is you can work from remotely from all sorts of places, can't you?
Yes, no, it's great. The coaching and the speaking I can do anywhere.
Lovely. So Fiona, let's just start out by having you tell us a bit about your story. Well, how did you come to be doing what you are doing now?
Okay, so, without sort of going back to the diaper stage and things like that, basically I came from a charmed childhood. And people say, what do I mean by that? I came from two well-educated parents who are fascinated with the English language and, had a great vocabulary. And I grew up in high school as having a vocabulary that really outranked most even of my teachers, including I remember getting proverbial, distress from my English teacher at one point because I was using language that in theory I wasn't supposed to know, which just blew my mother up, but that's okay. But I came from two very well-educated, loving parents, And so I consider it a charmed childhood. And then I did an interesting thing. At 17, I went into engineering, following in the footsteps of my father. And that's when I started to what I call play in a man's world. And for about 30 years, I, evolved as a young woman, and I grew up and I worked with men. And that just shaped my whole outlook on life. I quite often say that I'm kind of like, I look like the girl next door, but then as soon as I open my mouth, out comes George Clooney. Very opinionated, very blunt, very direct, and kind of a take no prisoners kind of attitude. So a couple of things that happened during that time frame that also shaped me, and I think we're often shaped by, our worlds are shaped by what happens to us. After this charmed childhood, when I went into engineering, pretty much within 2.5, 3 weeks, I had my first car accident.
Oh.
And my health, and in having 3 more car accidents, 2 other concussions, a whole bunch of immune system disorders, and it just kept coming, wave after wave for decades. Plus, I was in a high-stress job. I had moved from engineering into IT and then ultimately into recruiting and career coaching. And basically, I was forsaking my health and my love relationships to make the big bucks. So I was blowing up my life. I was on a definition of success that money was everything. And I found out the hard way that really you can't buy health. Right. So, but all the way through this, guys have shaped how I communicate and how I look at the world. And so one of the things is that when I sort of got enough money and I thought, okay, it's time to reclaim myself and reclaim my feminine self and, my sense of humor and things like that, I had to reframe my definition of success. And I thought, okay, I've been doing this for 25 plus years in a man's world. Let's go play with women. And I got an eye-opening experience over the last 5-7 years in just how men and women communicate and what we think of and what our expectations are. So that's sort of what brought me here today. And most recently, I have been working heavily with women so that we're creating our best lives and that we're able to communicate and be clear on what we want and then have the confidence in what that looks like to go after it.
So when you first noticed that there was a difference, when you first came out of the engineering world and the IT world and everything and noticed that there was a profound difference, what was that like for you?
It was very painful because I had been indoctrinated almost in how, I'd through stripes on the back, through, the school of hard knocks, I had figured out how to make it in a man's world, how to communicate to men so that I would earn I would garner the respect. I would be able to, juggle the balls. I'd been called, and, some of the terms as to how the book got created and what its name was. But I'd been called names along the way. I toughen up. I learned not to take it personally. So when I went into semi-retirement and I thought, okay, let's go play with women, I'm sorry, it sounds rude and disgusting and all, but I almost had to stand on my head. I couldn't, there are still days that I go, how can we be so different, men and women? So it's just been a huge learning as to the mapping of how men and women look at the world and function in the world.
So when you started this journey, now I know you've written a couple of books now, or at least one book, and you're working on another one.
Yes.
When you started, were you coming from that place of having that control of yourself and being in a man's world, or were you starting the journey of writing books when you were learning about how it was to be in a woman's world?
I took my mess and turned it into my message. So it was kind of having come through the whole 35 plus years. I'm in my mid 50s now. And so it was my, especially as women, we often have in the back of our mind a piece, which is, am I enough? I'd come through all of that. I knew what confidence meant. I knew how to give it to other people and help coach them having more confidence and what the pieces are. So as an engineer, I was able to break things down and find mechanisms so that, especially as women, we can map into a world that, isn't always natural to us. There's that isn't always in our favor. So the book, Babe in Total Control of Herself, and its subtitle is How to Stop Chasing Men and Start Choosing Love, is really heavily the journey that I took without a lot of my journey in there. So it's as my friends always say, it's one of those books that if you're having a hard time, either as a guy or a girl, but it's a book for women about women, and men love it. You can pick it up, you can throw it down, and quite often you'll get a piece. And it just helps to reframe how we look at life and what might be getting in our own way to getting what we say we want.
Right. There's I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if it's a commercial or it's a YouTube thing or what it is, but there's a short clip of a video of a man sitting there on the couch looking off into the distance like he's not caring, paying attention, wanting to be in the space. And there's a woman who's thinking all sorts of things about he doesn't love me anymore, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. And then when you see it later, he's trying to figure out how come some piece of machinery isn't working anymore and going through it all in his mind. And so, it's funny, it's humorous, but there's so much truth in that we do behave differently and we do think differently. So what are some of the fundamental ways in which we communicate differently?
Men think serially. They, as I jokingly say, when men wake up in the morning, and this is where you're going to tell that I'm kind of, that engineer IT type of person, think of how we wake up in the morning as booting up your computer. Okay. So when a guy boots up in the morning, he brings up one browser, 4 tabs. Okay. And I can go into what those 4 tabs are. But in general, he's dealing with a finite number of actions that he's really going to focus on during that day. A woman wakes up, she boots up, and she brings 4 browsers up and 10 tabs each. And we keep them all open. And I am a classic example of that. I mean, I always have, 2 browsers, 3 browsers, a couple of tabs each at least. Sometimes you can't even tell what the tabs look like. I've got so many open. Right now, I have at least 10 on my computer.
And I won't tell you how many I have open.
I know. So there is a fundamental difference. Women, we believe we can multitask. We are definitely better communicators in general. And you and I are going to generalize all the way through this. Yet when you're looking at how the two sexes deal with each other in the world, it's an awareness. And with an awareness, then we can make choices, and we can understand that from choices comes the consequences of those.
So how much of this do you think is nature versus nurture?
Oh, gosh. There's just no way I would want to go on record for that, because I think back to myself and some of the clients that I coach. I think let's go with 50-50. Our reptilian brains, which I talk about in the book, and I sort of I've got a funny story about it, and how our reptilian brains, which is that little tiny piece of our brain that is prehistoric, that has been around since basically the dinosaur age, that brain is the exact same in men and women. We think about sex the same way. We think about, fight the same way. We think about food the same way. We think about the basics of what keeps us alive. And then when you add the other 2 brains on top of them, that's when things start to shift a little bit. And then how we can, how the brain synapses function and where the power sources usually are in men and women. So looking at that, that's got to be at least, and I mean, someone can correct me, at least 50%, okay, as to how we physically function. But then I grew up in a guy's world. So that really changed what I get upset over, how, what my instincts are. My guy yesterday said something about, he says, I just want it simple. My only comeback to him was, you don't want to live with a woman then.
Exactly.
And I'm simpler than some. Okay, I'm not easy necessarily, but I'm simpler. I at least know the basics.
So, can you give an example of a communication that would be different? Were you speaking to a woman or speaking to a man?
Okay, the whole "I'm sorry" piece
Yeah.
just immediately comes to mind. It's a hashtag, sorry, not sorry. When I grew up, recently all the way through my, career, my corporate career, there was no way I would have been able to knock on the door. And don't forget, there was pretty much all guys. Okay. There was one other senior woman who shared the washroom, downtown Toronto with me. But there was no way that we were going to knock on a door and go, I'm sorry, I just have one question.
Right.
There's no way we would have been taken seriously. You knocked on the door, said, got a second?
Right.
And off you went. This is an epidemic of how we're still using that word. I was talking to someone that I can't remember, and I had to finally, do a timeout with my hands, go, timeout, I'm sorry, I can't keep going on this way. And I realized as I was explaining to her that we had to start dropping this, I'm sorry. I have for the past 5 years, since playing more with women, I've started to say it. Gina, I've been starting to get indoctrinated into how can I be apologizing for something that does not require an apology? A guy would not do that. You'll hear example after example. Women who are listening to their guys say, okay, gotta go now. Gotta take the kid to soccer. Bye. I'll be back online at 10 o'clock.
Right.
Hangs up the phone. A woman would be, I'm so sorry. I have to leave. I've got to take the kids to soccer. You know what? I'll probably be, and we're apologizing not only with our tone and our voice. How did we get to there? I just finished writing an article on the Always commercial that came out with the Super Bowl, like a girl.
Right.
And it's coming back to this. We are still teaching our young leaders that something at puberty, that they have to start apologizing pretty much for their being.
So it's apologetic language, and it's tentative language, not just the I'm sorry piece, but probably
it's our tone.
Yeah.
We go up quite often, and I'm generalizing because there's a whole other generation of us women who would be called, and I know you have a PG podcast, but you can imagine some of the words that we've been called.
Yeah.
And I make fun of these words in my book, definitely, because I've been called them all. There's a whole generation of us that maybe take this, screw it, I'm not sorry.
Right.
to the other extreme, which is, we're really busting beliefs and being, too maybe aggressive in some of our language. And we also get chastised in evaluations, in performance evaluations, or watch me in a woman's networking group, watch me have a sales conversation with somebody who's not used to me, and they're like, wow, you're direct.
So are you seen to be aggressive in that kind of a
Yes.
situation? You are.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm a woman, so you look at me and I look normal, right? And then all of a sudden I open my mouth, and I don't even know I'm saying it, but I can start to feel energy shift if I'm not really, and I'm an introvert. So, we're covering so much ground, introverts, extroverts, the sorry, not sorry type of, and guys get away with a lot more of this.
And why do you think that is?
Hundreds of years of, let's call it male domination, for lack of a better word. I posted on my Facebook, and I don't know if I'll find it in time, but I did post and I'll get to it before we finish, hopefully. It was sort of where men have issues with this sorry, not sorry piece, which is completely different. They're not saying sorry the right way to a woman's eyes. They're not showing they're kind of sloughing it off. And their women do not feel that they are being heard. So I just found it. I posted on my Facebook, Fiona Fine, which is what a real apology looks like. Can you tell the difference? The first one, I'm sorry, is a statement. The next one, I won't do it again, is a promise. How do I make it up to you is a responsibility. Both women and men can learn from that.
Exactly. So what kind of advice are you giving in your book for the women and the men to how to communicate better? Because sometimes the conflict most of the time the conflict is poor communication.
I would have to say poor communication and expectations are the two pieces that I trip over the most. So one of the pieces, if I'm doing relationship coaching, but I would have to say it also seems to heavily apply in an employee-employer situation. Think of it as a relationship, okay? And each communication is a relationship of a moment. Take 100% accountability for the clarity of that relationship, okay? So that means I'm taking 100% accountability not only to have the conversation, but to make sure it's clear and that I've said it without blaming and pointing fingers and realizing that the common denominator in my conversations is me. And that's where I say take 100% accountability and see what you can create in your life. I mean, that applies to so many things.
And that's for men and women.
Yes. Because guys go, okay, that's not my job. That's not my responsibility. They're waking up, and we didn't get into the details, but they're waking up with one tab, 4 browsers. I keep saying, if you think, and I'm just briefly, if they wake up with 4 things in no specific order, their relationship isn't even a consideration usually on their 4 tabs. They don't open a tab called My Relationship. I mean, think about it. They just ask your guy the next time, when was the last time you thought about our relationship? I did it just not quite as a joke, but oh my God, I think I got 4.5 minutes before his brain shut down.
Interesting. And again, generalizing, but
yes.
But so what has been the response to the book?
To the babe in total control of herself, affectionately known as B.I.T.C.H. I can divide a room, I can divide an audience, I can divide a dinner table with the name of that book, because even that word is so derogatory to a lot of women. It's been, kind of, that word has been yelled at them. Men feel it too, but differently. So the book title really starts to divide and starts the conversation.
It's provocative.
It stirs the pot.
Right.
Yeah. Type of thing. So the reaction is really, frankly, you either love it or you hate it. And I'm okay with that because I live as a bridge between 2 worlds. I'm okay with that because I want to have the communication. I want to have the conversations with men and women who are ready to step up to their better lives. They want more money. They want better relationships. They want better health. That's who I am. So I'm clear.
And the next book, who do you see your audience being?
This one goes a little bit further back into my career coaching, my speaking to men and women who aren't just looking at necessarily their love-based relationships or their intimate relationships, yet want to take it to the level of how do they create their best life, their best teams, their best employees, their best employers. There's where that 100% accountability and the gender biased communication styles that we're still dealing with. The sorry, I'm not sorry.
So you see this being able to have an impact in personal relationships and workplace relationships.
Yes. That is where I'm heading it. What I call the fierce conversation. Susan Scott has a book, Fierce Conversations and Fierce Leadership. Yes. Yep. And coming from my background as, let's call it an IT recruiter, you can imagine I'm pretty good at having the tough conversations, both with my clients, which is, you can't have that. They don't make that type of a person, and both with, people who are looking for more money, more jobs, and things like that, which is like, you can't have, that's not simple. That's a needle in a haystack. Let's keep talking.
So with your coaching, I know you do a number of things. You've got a publishing company. You do coaching. Are you coaching men and women?
Yes.
You are.
I love both. They keep me sane, frankly. They also make sure that I'm in the field. I'm hearing what's going on. As the decades, we are evolving, thank goodness. If I talk to young women leaders, they don't think of themselves as women leaders. My age bracket, we do. We've got serious stripes on the back as to what got flayed off us. But younger women, they just think of themselves as leaders. So there's already a communication.
And I think that's changing in across the board in many different, it used to be a woman bus driver or, in my other life, I'm a United Church clergy. So, a woman minister instead of just a minister, right?
Yep.
So it's nice to hear that that's disappearing.
It is. I mean, actor, actress, that now that most of them, they're actors.
Right. Waiter,
Chairperson,
server.
chairwoman. We wait till our first female president.
Exactly.
Yours. Sorry. We've had a female prime minister, and that did not last long, unfortunately.
Right. I know. I remember. So Goddess Connections, tell me about that.
That is the company that I formed under my corporation. That was so that I could advocate for women to step into their best lives. We put out a publication called How to Put the Fun Back into Dating.com. And really, honestly, that was because I was having so much fun in my dating world and life, and how I dealt with men in a dating situation is vastly different. And so I started coaching women on that. There are a ton of women, though, that don't look at a dating situation as anything fun. Oh. And so that was a huge learning for me. The dating and fun are not two words that go together. So then I also wanted to work with the women leaders around the world. And so Women Who Run It is for the strong, successful, that woman that I was saying that maybe has more of an edge to her and is driven, on her deliverables, and realizes that it can be very isolating at the top. And that there's not a lot of communication, there's not a lot of support, and this is where everything is a journey. We all are pieces of our background and everything, and that's why I say my mess became my message, which is becoming a movement. How do we learn to communicate? How do we learn to integrate ourselves, men and women? How do we make ourselves complete so that we're not necessarily looking for a boss or a job or a partner to make ourselves complete?
Right. So it's the self-reflective part.
Yeah, and the harmonizing. I've given up on the word balance. You see, these are the subtleties of language that I personally love. Which is, balance just seems so static to me. It's like a teeter-totter, it's up, down, or something like that. But harmony means that there's some movement and some flow, because I know, all of us know that we're going to be out of balance all the time. There's just no possibility. Yet, can we find that flow? Can we find that harmony? Can guys tap into that energy and not drive themselves into their definition of success?
How did you know that, what drove you to know that you needed to put this in a book format?
We were publishing, I was writing and I was doing radio and things like that. And it got to the point where it seemed to coalesce into, okay, this can have an impact. Even if it's the butterfly effect, even if it's just, a little ripple. But how do we get the conversations going? How do we realize what it is that we are doing in our communications and our accountability? So, and with a book title like that, it's going to divide a room.
Sure, and it's going to attract attention. People want to pick it up.
Or they won't. They'll want to throw it against my sister in the UK is like, I cannot believe you wrote a book with that nickname.
Huh.
She's like, it's just because she only sees the disempowering meanness of the B.I.T.C.H word.
Right.
She does not see my evolution and where I want us to evolve to, which is how do we step in to be babes in total control of ourselves, and how do we take that control in a good way and step into it and have fun with it and make it a giggle And that's where I got to finally after, my 25 years. And if I'd had that giggle, honestly, Jen, during my working in a man's world, if I could have found that giggle back then, I can't imagine how much more money, how much more fun I would have had, how better my health was in my love relationships. But I didn't have it. And so really, I love working with younger women to say, you don't have to do this the hard way. How do we help you? How do we support you so that, you don't have to necessarily make the quote, the mistakes that, your mothers and I have made.
Have you heard from people who have read your book and have taken your advice and have made significant changes?
I have. I do. We have forums. We have our women's roundtables and things like that. Probably from the book itself, one of the dating pieces that I never knew would have such an impact is men chase, women choose. You asked, was it nature versus nurture? That is nature. Men chase, women choose. Think of the Serengeti. Think of what a lion does, a male lion does, a female lion does. A male lion chases who he wants in his entourage, in his pride. A female sits and chooses who she wants to sire her pups. And it doesn't work. The number of men that tell me that go, I just got turned off. She just did all the pursuing and there was nothing for me to do, basically. And the number of women that go, all I did was text and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that probably didn't go well. Yeah, I haven't heard from him again. I'm like, yeah, sorry. So I have been known to take over friends and clients. I have literally I've taken over their text or their email conversations and said, try this. And I'll get this feedback going, oh my God, he called me back. And I'm like, yeah, and there's the bridge. That's, what I'm good at.
What you're good at. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
I'd really, if you could wave a magic wand, I would really love to see myself. I'm an introvert. So one of my personal growth and getting out of my comfort zone is I'm happy. After I was disabled after my second car accident, I was one of the first telecommuters in my industry, and I had to because I wasn't leaving my home. So I am happy as a pig in whatever on a phone like this.
Right.
I am less happy on a stage. So I'm doing a lot more stage and media work. Somebody actually teasingly said to me, just start modeling or something like that, get better, get more in the camera. And so that's where my growth is. I'd like to be able to reach as many people as possible to say we have choice. With choice comes, with our clarity comes choice, and with that we can choose how we're going to live our lives.
And what is a last piece of advice you would give to the Communication Diva audience?
Probably what I spoke to before, take 100% accountability. Anytime in your job, in your communications, when you want to blame somebody and, that finger is wagging out at the world, look at your hand and realize that 3 fingers are pointing back at you. We as individuals are the common denominator in our communications. If they're not going well, quite often, and it's not just one person, but it's over and over again, quite often there's something about how we do it, and I had to learn this, and I'm still learning it. When we do it, so if we take that 100% accountability and not make it about somebody else, everything starts to just ease and to create itself with ease.
That's good advice. And I'm big about the accountability in the book I'm about to put out too. So I appreciate that, though, as far as the that being advice for both men and women.
What's the name of the book, Jen?
What They See, How to Stand Out and Shine in Your New Job.
Right. Perfect. We could probably have lots of conversations.
I'm sure we could. So where can people find you if they want to know more or they want to connect with you, Fiona?
Best place, the simplest, is the website www.fionafine.com.
So Fiona Fine, Fine.com.
Yes.
And we'll put all of that on the show notes over at communicationdiva.com with a link to your site and your social media and that as well. This has been delightful.
Great, thank you. And I mean, if people disagree, definitely go to Twitter and argue with me. I love a good argument.
And what's your Twitter handle?
At Fiona_Fine.
Perfect. So there you go. You can connect directly with Fiona.
Let's get the conversation going. I'm just one voice.
There you go. Well, thanks very much, Fiona, and take good care.
It's been a pleasure.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview, and I'm going to be getting more interviews online soon. I want to get back into the swing of that. It's just been a bit crazy. So thanks for listening to this interview. You can hear us over on Stitcher Radio. You can hear us on iTunes. And if you're interested at all in podcasting and you want to know more about it, there's some information on the website at Communication Diva, including discount codes to Libsyn, and to my friend Cliff Ravenscraft has a course called Podcasting A to Z. And there's a hefty discount there if you're interested in learning how to do this with him. So go on over there and check out the Libsyn connection and the Podcasting A to Z connection. And I also would love for you to go to iTunes and give a review of Communication Diva on iTunes. The more reviews, the more people will find me, and the more people hopefully will learn to communicate more deeply, to use their communication skills wisely, to improve on the things that they can improve upon, to have more success in life. So I'm Jen Swanson. I really appreciate you listening. And until next time, happy communicating.